Welcome to Our Only Thing, story lovers. I'm Pablo.
And I'm Grace.
Spooky season is upon us, and that means one thing. It's time to get your horror watch list in order.
Here are 10 irresistible stories to get you all the way to Halloween.
First up, we have Oddity.
Could you open the door?
What do you want?
You're in trouble.
This one came out of nowhere and won over audiences this summer. Occult relics, creepy twins, and a golem. What more could you want? If you want to impress your friends with something fresh in your next spooky movie night, this is the way to go. What did you think about Oddity, Grace?
We should never fuck with objects that are allegedly cursed. This movie is the absolute perfect warning label for that. Next up is Ready or Not.
At midnight, you have to play a game.
Why?
It's just something we do when someone new joins the family.
Winning a game of hide and seek may have impressed your friends when you were a kid, but a deadly game of hide and seek as an adult is a whole other thing. If you love horrific takes on innocent childhood pleasures and protagonists named Grace, I'm not biased at all, then this is the film for you. Does this film's song
Run, 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 time to run and hide.
haunt you, Pablo?
I don't find myself in hide and seek situations very often, but yes, I didn't realize that this song is an original for the film. Like, I thought this was a real hide and seek song because, you know, any songs associated with children's games are usually more nefarious than they need to be.
Ring around the rosy.
Next, we have The Guest.
My name is David. Mrs. Peterson, I knew your son, Caleb.
Which is more of a thriller than an outright horror film. But it's this stealthy, spooky season horror film because it's set during the lead up to Halloween. So join us in making The Guest a spooky season tradition, please. I watch it every year.
It's funny, I don't associate it with Halloween.
Really?
But I rewatched it last night because it had been a while. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, Halloween is all through this. And the thing that stood out for me is there's a sequence that takes place at a Halloween dance at a high school. And I'm so jealous of those decorations. I'm like, I wish my high school had that budget decades ago, because that is a dance worth going to.
You're right. Like, no high school has a budget like that to have such nice... I mean, they essentially build like a haunted house in that gymnasium, and no one gets to do that in high school.
Next up, we have The Babadook.
If it's in a word, or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the bubble.
You know what's scarier than a rando guest? A rando guest that manifests from a creepy children's book. If psychological, atmospheric horror gets your blood flowing, it doesn't get much better than this Australian masterpiece. Pablo, people still, 10 years later, consider this one of the best horror movies of the 2000s. What do you think?
I know I do. It was one of those films that kicked off that exploration of trauma, trademark trauma, in horror in the mid-2010s. I love it. Oh, gosh. Hold on. I have the book.
What? No, you don't. You wouldn't put your life in danger that way. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Like breaking things.
1 second. Like, I had chaos happen when I got up.
I heard, and then I heard a dog barking. It was a whole series of things. All for a damn book that you probably shouldn't open, by the way. I'm a little bit afraid that you own this book. Oh my God.
It is. It's the actual book. The prop makers of the film made like 100 of these, I think. And it actually is a pop-up book.
You put your life into their hands by purchasing that disaster of a book.
I was getting up and I was like moving my water bottle over so I'd have a place to set the book down on my desk. And it slipped out of my hand, broke, and spilled water all over the place, including into an electrical socket.
Okay, so...
Which I don't know what even to do about that.
The Babadook caused that to happen. So maybe this is a lesson for our viewers to not own that book.
Yeah, do not buy this book from me ever. It's my curse.
It caused water to go into an electrical socket.
What do I do about that? I don't know what to do about that. Next up, we have The First Omen.
God has great plans for you.
This was possibly the creepiest film of the year. It edged out Longlegs for me, at least, and Cuckoo for some of that indelible imagery. You put it up against any other classic horror film, and I think it holds up. Do you think this prequel lives up to the original?
I think it lives up in a way that most sequels and prequels don't live up to franchises, especially a franchise that has been going on for decades like this one. It captured the atmosphere, it captured the doom, but nothing tops The First Omen.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
In 2021, Midnight Mass made us think twice about the concept of miracles. If you enjoy character building and slow burns, this one is worth putting your faith into. Pablo, you know how much I adore Mike Flanagan. This is probably the best work he's ever done. How do you feel? Is this your favorite Mike Flanagan piece?
It's tough to choose one or even two things that he's done that, across film and television, that would be my favorite. But for me, as far as his television shows go, I don't think anything will ever top The Haunting of Hill House. If we're talking film, he cracked the code on adapting Gerald's Game where people thought that was unfilmable, and he did it, and it was good. But I would take his adaptation of Dr. Sleep over that. Up next is You're Next.
What is that?
It's a home invasion siege film, and those are pretty terrifying in general. I think this has a really nice spin to it for the genre. You throw in a lot of comedy, a lot of levity, and then a really great final girl here. It's kind of that, turning things on their head where these people didn't know what they were getting into with her, and she's a badass. So come for the crossbow, stay for the razor wire.
And for horror movie legend Barbara Crampton.
Always love her.
Anytime I think about her, of course, like most people, I think about that scene in Reanimator. I don't even need to say what it is, but it involves a mouth assault. And she just owned that shit like it was filming a normal scene.
She's another example of somebody in the horror film industry who, is legendary, does good work, but also is just a good person. So what's your favorite home invasion film then?
Definitely Hush. It's another Mike Flanagan classic. And it really addresses that question of how do you fight off a home invader if you're mute and deaf? And there's a nod to Midnight Mass in this.
I finished your book.
There's the connection.
There's definitely a connection. What do you think of the setup of this film, Pablo?
I think it's so well done, and it's a novel idea. When I think about it, I also think about Fede Alvarez's Don't Breathe, which is basically the inverse of that. You got, home invasion happening in the reverse where, the main characters or protagonists are actually the assholes here going up against, somebody who is blind. Next up, we've got Hellraiser from 2022.
What is it you pray for?
So if you've already kind of worn out watching the original Hellraiser films, you couldn't do any worse than checking out David Bruckner's reimagining of the franchise. It nails the vibe. It's maybe missing some of the sexuality that is a hallmark of the series. It's in there, but it's not on the same sort of transgressive wavelength as the originals were. But I loved it. I think the performances are good. The gore is good. Effects are good. Do you have a favorite Hellraiser, Grace?
Hellraiser 2 wins by a pin.
Me too.
There's one scene that does it for me.
And to think, I hesitate.
That one scene scared me so much. That one line delivery, because this franchise is really about this idea of where pleasure meets pain. That doctor ran from it. And then when he was forced to become a Cenobite, then he gave into it. And that one moment terrified me so much. Lastly, we have Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
What happens when the story dies? The evil is set free.
When most people think about 90s meta horror, they give all the credit to the Scream franchise. But Wes Craven's New Nightmare horrified audiences over 2 years before Scream.
You're gonna hate me for this. I'm gonna make an admission here. I haven't seen it, and I'm going to fix that right now.
There is a lot of controversy around this movie. There's one side of Freddy fans who say it shouldn't be part of the canon because of the nature of the story. And then there's the other side who says it's absolutely a Freddy film. At the heart of it, it's really Wes Craven who had walked away from the franchise after the first movie because any Freddy fan knows that he only intended Nightmare on Elm Street to be one movie. The whole entire movie is about facing your fears, the power that we give to fears. And once you actually face that fear, you're able to conquer it. Robert Shea, who obviously has gone on to do a lot with New Line Cinema, he saw the potential that a Nightmare franchise could have, and he had Wes Craven reshoot a new ending. And when you watch that ending, it makes no sense because Nancy had already defeated Freddy. And it also includes one of the worst mannequin sequences that we've ever seen. But after that, Wes Craven was really disappointed, left for a very long time. He tried to come back for Nightmare 3, and there were a lot of creative differences, so he walked away from that project too. But by the time 10 years had gone by and he decided to work on New Nightmare, what he really was exploring is this idea of what happens when a story gets away from you. When you create a story and it no longer belongs to you, and all these people are adding on to this story and changing these characters and doing different things that you didn't bless, how you actually deal with that and confront that.
It's so relevant still today when you look at what's happening with horror franchises and the creative control and directors kind of fighting for some of their creative ideas, and sometimes they're getting replaced by others who are basically coming in and I'll say scabbing, for lack of a better term. But hey, a meta Nightmare story, you've got me sold. I'm excited to watch it.
And for anyone who hasn't watched it or wants to watch it, please let us know in the comments which camp you're actually in. And then I'll tell you which camp I'm in.